Hi, thank you for waiting. Welcome to our introduction to UCAT session. It's a collaboration with Medic Mind with SAMDA. First of all, we'd like to introduce ourselves. So, SAMDA is a student run society based at Barts, and essentially, we're a society dedicated to widening access to applying to medicine and dentistry. So, we're here for you. Even though we're based in East London, anyone can attend our events. Um, So please make sure that you follow our Instagram, Barts_Samda, because that's where we release our sign up forms and any of the upcoming events. So just to signpost out the couple of events in the next few months. So in August, we're going to have a medical conference. So this is going to be in person. It's open to any schools, any student who wishes to come, and essentially that will include taster medical lectures, so anatomy, physiology, and in the afternoon we'll have personal statement workshops. In September, we have our medical taster day and dentistry taster day. In October, we have our mock panel interviews, and November, we have our mock MMI interviews. All of the links to sign up for these events will be released on our Instagram, and that's why I want to emphasize that you do follow us at Barts_Samda. So this is just a screenshot of our Instagram page. So please do follow us on that. So the itinerary for today, I'm just going to do this quick introduction, which is currently going on, and then we have a UCAT overview, and we have our tutor from Medic Mind who's going to do an exam technique session, and they're going to go through all the different sections of the UCAT, sorry, with some of their pro tips. We're going to have a closing Q&A, and we're going to have a conclusion. We sort of have to go through safeguarding. So, yeah, so our YouTube comments have been turned off. Any of the participant information will be kept confidential. If you have any questions for the UCAT live stream, please head over to our Instagram at Barts_Samda, and you can submit any questions anonymously, and we'll sort of address them in our Q&A session towards the end of this live stream. Alternatively, if you've got questions for our tutor who's going to do the mini UCAT tutor session, we'll have Mentimeter running so you can do anonymous questions through there. And going forwards, if anyone has any questions at all relating to medicine, dentistry, your applications, UCAS, interviews, anything, please do email us at samda@bartsonthelondon.com or DM us on Instagram, and we'll get back to you within 2 to 3 days. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, if you have any questions, then head over to our Instagram and you can submit any questions there. And we're going to be giving out free resources from Medic Mind. So that will include UCAT starter techniques, BMAT starter techniques, and application guidance, and MMI stations and example videos. And the way in which you'll get that is if you stay towards the end, we'll release our feedback form and we'll send you an email with all the links to our free resources. Okay, and now that the introduction is done, we'll get on with our UCAT 2023 overview. Okay. Um, so we've got this UCAT 2023 PowerPoint that was sent to us by UCAT official. And as you may know, there's several universities in the UK that use UCAT, and we've listed all the ones, some example ones on the screen. And if you want the full list, then you can find that on the UCAT website. Our key dates are on the screen above. So 10th of July is when testing starts, and the 28th of September is when the last testing date is. They won't make any exceptions if you don't book a test within those dates. So please make sure that you do book your test within the 10th of July and 28th of September. The booking deadline is the 21st of September. So after that, you can't book any UCAT. And with fees and bursaries, so the test is £70, and if you're taking the UCAT test outside of the UK, then it's £115. If you're um, on any of the following, so 16 to 19 bursary, free school meals, or any of the other grants that are listed on the screen, then you can be eligible for a bursary, which will pay for your UKCAT in full, UCAT, sorry, and you can apply from the 16th of May. And the way in which it works is you should try and apply for your bursary voucher before you book your test. And then when you're booking it, you'll use that voucher and it will give you a free test. However, if you've already booked your UCAT and you're eligible for a bursary voucher, then you can apply for it later on, and you can email UCAT for a refund. With access arrangements, if anyone is entitled to extra time or any other accommodations in school or college, or you have a documented special educational need, disability, or medical condition, then you may be entitled to access arrangements when sitting the UCAT, sorry. And what that will include is a 25% extra time, rest breaks, or anything that you need. However, you'll need to submit an application to UCAT official for these access arrangements. So you'll need to provide supporting evidence, and UCAT official will then approve your application depending on whether it meets their criteria. So some of the access arrangements might be due to dyslexia or dyspraxia or a range of other medical conditions. It's considered on a case by case basis. So if you have any questions or have any doubts, it is worth applying and just seeing what UCAT official have to say. If you want more information on access arrangements, then on the UCAT website, they have a load of details and FAQs that you might want to have a read. So the test format, so you've got 5 different sections: verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, and situational judgment. I'm just going to run through each of the sections briefly. So in terms of the timings, you've got the questions and timings on the screen, as you can see, but each section is preceded by a 1 minute introduction section. So verbal reasoning is 20 minutes, but you'll have a 1 minute introduction section, and you get that for all of the sections. So with verbal reasoning, you get 21 minutes to answer 44 questions. So what that means is that you'll get 11 passages, and for each of the passages, you'll have 4 questions. And essentially, verbal reasoning assesses your ability to read and think carefully about information presented in passages and to draw conclusions from them. So one of the recommendations from UCAT official is to try and read newspapers and come up with conclusions from what you've read, and that's just a way of practicing the skill. If you have a passage in the UCAT, for example, where you've got prior knowledge of that passage, then try to forget your prior knowledge and just answer it based on what's in the passage. Some questions require critical reasoning skills and to make inferences and draw conclusions from information. Um, and so basically, it's just assessing your ability to read a large amount of information and draw conclusions from it. This is an example of what it might look like. So on the left, you've got your example passage, and then on the right, you've got your questions. It's got a calculator on the top, but you obviously don't need that when you're doing verbal reasoning. So you've got decision making. So that's a 31-minute section with 29 questions, and that's associated with tables, diagrams, text, charts, or graphs. And each of those 29 questions are standalone questions, they're not related to each other. And it requires you to assess it assesses your ability to apply logic to reach a conclusion or decision, to evaluate arguments, and to analyze statistical information. So there are a number of different questions that you might be asked. So it might involve logical puzzles, Venn diagrams, and much more. And it requires knowledge of mathematics and logical reasoning. Um, but there's no terminology that is required for you to answer any of the questions. And it might help for you to make notes using a whiteboard or marker pen. I was given a sheet of paper and pen, but it depends on your testing, your test center. This is an example of your decision-making question. So you've got a question at the top, and you've got a series of statements below, and you'll just need to ask yes to answer it with yes or no. This is just an example of a type of question you might get asked. So quantitative reasoning, so that is 36 questions that you have to answer in 25 minutes. It's associated with tables, graphs, or charts. So this essentially assesses your ability to use numerical skills to solve problems. So you'll need to be familiar with ratios, percentages, averages, and fractions. So a basic knowledge of GCSE maths. You don't have to be the best at maths, but it is. If you do struggle with it, then it might be worth having a read of a GCSE revision guide with relation to ratios and percentages, for example. Um, However, it's less to do with your numerical ability and more to do with problem solving. Um, and a basic calculator is available for use in this section. But with UCAT, the most challenging thing is timing. And so they do advise you to perhaps try to use mental maths because it might save you time. A way in which I practiced that was to download a mental maths app, and whenever I had free time, I'd just have a go at doing mental maths. Um, that just helped me. It might not help you, but it's just a suggestion. Um, and again, you've got a whiteboard or marker pen or pen and paper, which may be useful for you when you're doing the quantitative reasoning section. And this is an example of what the screen might look like. You've got a calculator button in the top left, and obviously you've got your question on the screen. When you're practicing, you may choose to use a scientific calculator or a physical calculator. However, towards your exam date, I would recommend you trying to use their UCAT official calculator just to get used to the layout, um, and just so that you don't have any surprises on the day when you're using the calculator. With abstract reasoning, I found this the most difficult. It was 50 questions in 12 minutes, and it's associated with numerous sets of shapes. So you get one set of shapes, and you might have to answer a couple of questions relating to that shape pattern. It assesses your ability to identify patterns amongst abstract shapes where irrelevant and distracting material may lead to incorrect conclusions. I found that practicing abstract reasoning over a long period of time, it helped me to sort of get better and identify patterns more quickly. And there are four different question types that you may be asked when doing your verbal abstract reasoning section. So this is an example. You get a set of shapes on the left, and then on the right, you're given a question, and you'd have to sort of choose if that picture on the right goes in set A, set B, or neither of them. And situational judgment. So this is the only section where you're not graded in a numerical sense. You're given band 1 to 4, I think, with band 1 being the highest and band 4 being the lowest. So you'll get 69 questions, and you'll have to answer that in 26 minutes. And you'll have one scenario, and that scenario can be associated with up to 6 questions. And what that sort of measures is your ability to understand real life situations and identify critical factors and appropriate behavior in dealing with them. So it's assessing how well you would cope with clinical situations. Um, and it assesses your ability of integrity, perspective, team involvement, resilience, and adaptability. So, in previous years, they would justify this section in the fact that when you're applying for F1 rotation or hospitals, medical students are required to do a situational judgment test, and that will sort of that'll be used as your application to sort of fit fit your hospital that you want to apply to. But that's been scrapped. So Perhaps in the future they might scrap situational judgment, but for now, it's important that you do practice this section. Something that helped me was that I read the GMC guidelines, and that gave me a sort of idea of the pattern or the way of thinking in which I can sort of answer the situational judgment questions. So this is an example question. So you've got a scenario on the left where you're a medical student and you sort of have to you're given a scenario and you have to answer what you would do in that situation and what's important and whether if it's not important at all. So how you should prepare. So this is the official UCAT recommendations. So they recommend that you spend at least 25 to 30 hours preparing for your test and that you start preparing 4 to 6 weeks before your test date. They have free resources available on the UCAT questions website with over 1,000 example questions. Um, However, we recommend that you start using the UCAT questions towards the end or towards your UCAT date. And before that, you probably want to use other resources that you can find on the internet. Although UCAT official does not endorse any commercial UCAT question banks, you can find some banks which are really similar to the UCAT style. So on the UCAT website, they have a preparation plan, a tour tutorial, question banks, practice tests, test tools, and candidate advice. So I'd highly, highly recommend that you check out their website for official information. So some of the tips and advice that they've given you is to practice test timings because that's the hardest thing for a candidate, which is that the timings are quite tight. So make sure that you do practice with the test timings. Answer all questions because there's no points deducted for a wrong answer. So make sure that you use your best guess and do not leave any blanks. If you're finding a question hard or you're struggling to answer it, then make sure you flag it and review it towards the end of the test to effectively manage your time. So, as I mentioned previously, when you're preparing for the UCAT, make sure that you use other question banks before you start using official practice tests towards the end of your preparation. And like I said, make sure you practice your timings so that you get it on point during the actual test. So during the test day, make sure you arrive at the test centre at least 15 minutes before you are due to start. If you're late, they don't allow you in. So you don't want to run the risk of missing your UCAT date. So make sure you are on time or early. Make sure you bring the correct ID or you will not be allowed to sit the test. The correct ID that they accept can be found on the UCAT website. So make sure you have a look. Before your test date, they'll send you an email with a candidate examination rules. So make sure you read that carefully because you may think that you're allowed certain things, for example, food and water, but in fact, you're not allowed any of them. So make sure you read your candidate examination rules carefully. Other people will be in your test room, so you can ask for earplugs to limit your disturbance. The people in your test room might not just be sitting in UCAT, they'll be sitting other things like your driving tests. So yeah, you can ask for earplugs to limit your disturbance. And if you have any questions or issues during the test, you can ask your invigilator. As I mentioned earlier, your scoring and results. So the four sections will comprise of a total score ranging between 1,200 and 3,600. And for the situational judgment, you'll be giving a banding score, with band one being the highest. Results will be available immediately after your test and will be available on your online account within 24 hours. Before you submit your UCAS application, you want to check how universities use the test, otherwise, you may be wasting an application. So, what that means is if you haven't scored that well on your UCAT, then it might not be worth applying to universities which heavily rely on UCAT scores to invite people to interview. If you've got a lower UCAT score, don't worry. There are universities that don't really have an to sit the BMAT and apply to BMAT universities instead. Um, I found that it's quite useful to look at the Medic portal. They have a quite a good range of free resources which advise you on universities that you can apply to depending on your UCAT result. Thank you for listening. You can go on the UCAT website for more information. You can scan this QR code for any of the latest UCAT publications, and you can follow them on Twitter or on Instagram and send questions in via their DMs. So this is a introduction bit of the session. It was quite talky. So thank you for listening, and we'll now be having Addy from Medic Mind, who will be doing a tutorial on how you can actually answer questions, giving his tips and tricks for them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Anisa. I'm just going to share my screen. 1 second. Can someone say if they can see my presentation or not? Okay. I'm going to carry on with the presentation. Just stop me if the host or anyone else seems they can't hear me or anything. So hi guys, my name is Adi. I'm from Medic Mind. I'm here to give you a quick run through the different sections and what the different sections entail. We'll try to keep it interactive. There's some questions to do as we go along, as I introduce the different sections and the different question types under each of the different sections of the UCAT. So this is the Menti code that you can use to just join menti.com and use this code, and then we can do some of the questions together as we go along, just to keep it as interactive as we can. So to give you an idea of the actual practicality on the day, sort of a feeling of how the UCAT exam will be. It will be in a test center, Pearson Test Center, and this is how it will be. It will be in front of a computer and a keyboard, and it will be a 2-hour examination. And this is just to give you an idea of the setup that you'll be having on the day of the exam. The only change that you've seen that has been made to the UCAT this time around is the number of questions in SJT. Other than that, the verbal reasoning has remained the same. So you have 44 questions to do in 21 minutes. That gives you approximately so 44 questions in about 21 minutes. And decision making, again, still at 29 questions in 31 minutes. Quantitative reasoning, 36 questions under 25 minutes, and abstract reasoning, 50 questions in 12 minutes, which continues to be the shortest section. The situation judgment is the only one that's been changed to 69 questions in 26 minutes. So overall, you have 150 minutes. So that gives you roughly a time of the entire examination. So now we're going to go into a deeper dive of each of the sections, the different question types in the sections, and in the time provided, give you some tips and tricks on how to handle each of the sections and different question types, and how to tailor your technique for different question types. This is a slide, this is quite a busy slide with lots of different question types. As you can see here, this is an example of a verbal reasoning question type that you'll come across. Usually has a bit of a passage to read from, and then a statement that you have to verify. One of the question types is true, false, and can't tell. The options that you have to choose from when you're answering this passage. Another question type that you commonly will see is this question type here, is from decision making, where you'll be given, it's sort of a logical puzzle. You'll be given lots of bits of data, and you have to weigh it up in your mind or work it on a piece of paper to see whether that applies logically. Which of the options here apply logically. And then when you move on to abstract reasoning comes down to pattern recognition, and seeing what pattern arises, and then matching the different sets, matching the different questions to each of the sets. For example, if you find this is a certain pattern that belongs to set A or set B, by looking to see what pattern arises, what's common between the different boxes in set A. And then this is finally your quantitative reasoning, which is which is pretty much very simple GCSE mathematics, but just in a shorter period of time. So to take a deeper dive, we'll start with verbal reasoning. So the first section that you'll come across in the UCAT exam will be your verbal reasoning. The verbal reasoning seems to be one of the most straightforward sections in the UCAT, and this comes down to basically having a general idea from school, college about what verbal reasoning is. It is reading comprehension passages, whereas the other sections might be a bit more different, especially abstract reasoning, which we'll touch upon later. So this section asks you to read a passage of the text and then answer the questions based on what you've read. It can seem quite simple, but as with every other section in the UCAT, the problem comes with timing. Timing is particularly tight for this section, and text can be often quite long, and it's designed that way on purpose. It's for you. It's to test whether you can go through plenty of text and see if you can come up with an answer in that short period of time. Time pressure, how you work under time pressure, etc. But there's nothing that you can improve. There's nothing you can't improve on with some really good practice, with good technique. So that's what we'll go under. So the examiners are trying to see how you cope under these stressful, time-limited situations. For example, this is a very busy passage here that you can see. So what you would, so have a read of the passage. And again, as I mentioned before, join at the menti.com code using menti.com website using that code, and we'll do some of the questions together. If you guys want to take a quick read of this, don't worry about getting it right or wrong. It's we're just trying to demonstrate what a question type will be like in verbal reasoning section. Just have a quick read. I'll give you about a minute or two to read it, and then we'll do some of the questions together in the upcoming slide. So just give me a thumbs up if you have had a read of the passage, and then we can continue on to the next slide. I'll wait a couple minutes to see some thumbs up there. If not, I'll just move on. Thank you. Just give a couple more minutes. If you guys struggle to just hold, obviously in the exam you'll have the passage to refer to when you're doing the questions, but it's just the matter of slides that you can't see the question again. If you want to take a picture of it and then look at it when you're doing the questions, that's absolutely fine as well. We'll just wait till just one more minute. Okay, good. I'll move on to the next slide. So, yeah, brilliant, guys. So let's go through them together. So 2 responded for. So I'll go on to the next. Just go on to the next slide and have a go at answering the questions. And the 3 of you have given your answers. Well done. Yeah. Good. 4 of you have given your answers. Okay. So the majority of you are going with restaurants do not reuse plastic straws. Just wait one more second. Okay, good. We've got a good number of responses across the aisle. That's really good. So most of us are going for the fourth option. Okay, good. There's some more of you that have been in. Okay, so um, so from the passage, so let's have a look. So most of you have gone for restaurants do not reuse plastic straws. So having a read of the passage, just a general technique that we sort of have with reading the passage and finding the answer. Obviously, it's a time pressured question. You have about 29 seconds roughly per question in verbal reasoning, which is not a whole lot of time to read big passages. And this is actually relatively a small passage when it comes to the UCAT. Sometimes you have even bigger passages, lots of information, lots of data sometimes. But how you would roughly do it is, first of all, take 10 seconds, 10 to 12 seconds to quickly skim the passage to get an idea of what the passage is talking about. So have a general idea of what the passage is telling you about. So have a quick skim. Doesn't have to be a thorough, active reading of each passage. Just a quick general idea of what the passage is talking about. Okay, so I can see a waste disposal firm. I'm just going to read my thoughts out and say my thoughts out loud. A waste disposal firm. Okay, hard to recycle. Something about plastic straws. There's a business firm here, ultimate human wastefulness, plastic straws. Okay, should revert to old style paper straws, which are biodegradable. It follows news that the most hated products for recyclers are Pringles and the Lucas 8 Sport. Okay, roughly there. Pretty much in human waste. Okay, 5p plastic straw tax. So lots of talk about paper straws and plastic wastes in general. Okay, it takes dose. Okay, and there's a Mr. Hall talking about different aspects of okay, the different people, different age groups using certain types of um, straws. Okay, and then finally considered by the government of a plastic bottle tax. That took a bit while for me to read it out loud, but in your head when you're doing it, it'll take you 10 to 12 seconds. So what's the use of that is to give you a general idea what the passage is talking about, because you don't want to blindly go into the question just reading that statement there. So these four statements that we saw earlier, we don't want to just blindly see that and think, oh, what am I trying to find? You want to be familiarize yourself, and often in the UCAT, what you find is there's a passage, and most of the times there'll be four questions following that same passage. So if you take some time in the first question, reading that passage for a bit longer, 10 seconds, 12 seconds, 15 seconds, you'll have a general idea, a better idea moving forward to answer those follow-up questions from the same passage. So that's a nice little trick to just help you save some time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my different statements that I'm trying to go through. Plastic straws are non-degradable. Gin and tonic is normally served with a plastic straw. Lucozade Sport are against the move to tax plastic straws. Restaurants do not reuse plastic straws. So which of the following are true? So that's the important thing. So I'm going to try to find a true statement, which would mean that three of these are false. So what I would do is look at individual statements and see which one have um, which one have a keyword that I can use that's easily findable. I know the plastics. I know the whole passage kind of talking about plastic straws, so it's going to be there a lot, mentioned a lot in the passage. So I'm not going to probably go for this first statement because it has the word plastic straws, but it's non-biodegradable. So I'm still thinking, okay, fine. I'm just going to see. I'm just going to try to prioritize my time and go for something that I feel safe that I could probably use. It's still a good statement, but I'm just going to keep going. Gin and tonic is normally served with a plastic straw. Okay, so as I remember reading gin and tonic here. I'm going to suddenly look at the passage, see if I can find gin and tonic. It was mentioned here, but why do you need a straw in your gin and tonic? Okay, that's fine. It does mention that people do use a straw in gin and tonic, but again, it's not mentioned as a fact. It's mentioned by one person who's giving their opinion on it, Mr. Hall. So that's not as strong as what I would like to do. What I'd like to take from it. Okay, Lucozade Sport are against the move to tax plastic straws. Okay, I saw earlier that Lucozade was mentioned. It follows news that the most hated products for recyclers are Pringles and Lucozade Sport, but that's about it. There's no other mention of Lucozade Sport, so it's a bit of an extreme, it's a bit of a big assumption to get there. There's not enough information to back it, so I'm just gonna keep that to the side. Restaurants do not reuse plastic straws. Okay, I saw a lot of mention about plastic straws, but any mention of restaurants is what I want to find. So where recycling facilities, most pubs and bars don't bother separating out used straws to recycle because it's fiddly, and frankly, they've been in the mouth of a stranger. There you go. That gives me the answer that they often do not reuse plastic straws because there's a stigma about it's being used. So I'm not going to touch it, etc. So well done. That was the true statement here. So, what is decision making? So, I hope you guys have a good idea about verbal reasoning and the basic thought process between starting the passage and then finally ending up with an answer in that short period of time. There's obviously more nuances to verbal reasoning with how you deal with different question types, how you deal with questions that have lots of scientific and factual information in them, author opinion questions where you have to read out the facts in the passage and the author's opinions in the passage, and there's lots of different caveats to that as well. But that's the general idea about the entire section of verbal reasoning. So now, moving on to the second section that you'll be facing, which is decision making. So this assesses your ability to make sound decisions and judgments using complex information. It is a some would say once you start practicing it that it's quite a fun section because it makes you think, and it's not something that is frustrating in the sense of abstract reasoning is often pattern recognition, and sometimes if you can't find the pattern you won't be able to answer, as opposed to decision making you can get somewhere with your judgment, with your practice, with your calculations, so you'll be able to make at least a logical jump at some point when you're running out of that time. So there are different question types in decision making. um, Syllogisms are questions like Tom has all birds are eagles, but all eagles are not parrots. Sounds a bit sounds a bit weird, but that's how questions are in the UCAT. So that you don't take them as the literal meaning, but just take them as they are presented to you. All parrots are eagles, but eagles are not birds. But birds are blue, but blue-colored animals are not all birds. So from that, answer these statements. All eagles are parrots. Is that true or false? Yes or no? So that would be the structure of syllogisms, where you have quite confusing words there, but the confusion usually comes in when you take it as the literal meaning. If you don't take it as the literal meaning and you work through the question logically and with a method, you should be fine. Methods as in making a table, drawing Venn diagrams, which is one of the question types as well. Those stuff help bring the chaotic piece of information that you'll be given into some order for you to analyze it. And probability questions, as it says, it's just what's the probability if Aaron has 6 marbles and there's a total of 48 marbles in the bag. He adds 3 marbles into the bag, and now there's a total of 48 red marbles and 68 blue marbles. Don't worry about the numbers. I'm just trying to give you an example. How many marbles did Aaron originally have that were red in color? Something like that. And you have to just work that out in the form of equations. It could be algebraic equations. Sometimes it's just you have to do a bit of smart thinking there, because you won't be able to. And the good thing is you don't have to work through the entire equation to get to your answer. You need to constantly keep checking with your answer options to see if you're close. If you're close, just choose it, save that time, go to the next question. The UCAT is as simple as you can make it for yourself. If you want to make it simple, just have good technique, and the good technique does come from practice and applying that technique to your practice. And more importantly, just having a general idea of what the different question types are and what are time traps and what do you need to basically spend less time worrying about, because all of them are technically worth the same mark. So some questions you can just come across later on and do it, but those again depend on the question types that you're facing. So moving on to the logical puzzles. Logical puzzles are the ones that we saw that I mentioned a while ago. Logical puzzles will be some puzzles like if in a classroom there's 6 seats and Daisy sits in the first seat. Daisy sits in the top right corner, but next to Daisy no other girl sits. But behind Daisy is either Tom or Jerry. So you have to basically, there'll be 4 or 5 lines of pieces of information, and you have to construct a table and basically work out all the probabilities of where they might be, and then based off that choose the answer options. You don't have to get a definitive answer, but if you have a general educated guess on what the answer is, that's what they aim for you to get at in that time period. And then recognizing assumptions, interpreting information is a bit more complex in the terms of it's a part of a bigger question. Um, Interpreting information might be in a form of a graph, might be in form of Venn diagram that's already been given to you, that's filled with information, filled with numbers, and you have to interpret it into text. So yeah, that's the general gist of these sort of questions. So this is an example of a non-fiction information question. So have a read of this, and then we'll have a question after. So yeah, have a read of this question, of this piece of information, and just give me a thumbs up once you've read it, and then we can move on to the question. Thank you, guys. Still give a couple more minutes for you guys to read it. Okay, good. We'll move on to the next to the question. Good. We have a lot of responses there already. Okay. The room is quite split. Okay, so far, I think the whole crowd is agreeing with the first option, but the room is still quite split on the last two questions. Give a couple more seconds for you guys to read. Okay, let's go through this. Tea plantations located in Assam are notable for their production of black tea. I think this is an answer that everyone agrees with strongly. 4.6. The Himalayas are a mountain range that crosses areas of northern India would be suitable environment to cultivate Assam tea. So first, let's deal with the first question. Tea plantations located in Assam are notable for the production of black tea. So this sort of gives you that verbal reasoning vibes, but this is just the format that's been given in. So what you actually have in the UCAT format will be these sort of statements there, and then whether you agree yes or no with it, based off the information that you read in the previous statement. Usually, the information that you've been given like this will be in the form of sentences, um, that you'll be reading in the form of sentences you have to interpret as opposed to a passage, but sometimes it can be in a passage as well. So now, going through this statement, the tea plantations located in Assam are notable for the production of black tea. Let's have a read of that. The Assam tea is a popular black tea derived from the leaves of Cecinensis. The tea grows best in a warm and humid climate at sea level. The region of Assam is situated in the northeast that shares a similar climate. The black tea growth in this region is benefited by the fact that the monsoon season brings about high precipitation and warm daytime temperatures, an environment akin to a greenhouse. So yeah, tea plantations are notable because it does say that Assam tea is a popular black tea. So synonyms, that's a safe assumption to make. Well done. The Himalayas, a mountain range that causes areas, would be a suitable environment to cultivate Assam tea. So no, I would strongly disagree with this one, as you guys rightly did as well, because it does there is mention of Himalayas nowhere in the passage, as far as I can see. You can't make that judgment without having any information about it, and that's another good point to bring up. Never use any of your external knowledge. It can be very easy to fall into the trap of using external knowledge when you're answering questions in the UCAT because you know so much about it, or it's such a common topic. Like, for example, saying something like the sun is the main source of light for the earth. It's like a very, or the sun, the earth revolves around the sun. Seems like a fact, a basic fact that you know that surely something else can be written about in the UCAT. But if no, there's no information about it in the passage or no reference to it, then even a basic fact like that, don't try to use the external knowledge when you're answering questions. So that's again with verbal reasoning, true, false, and can't tell. Can't tell means, just to give you a definition of what those three sections means. I think it's important. I should have touched on earlier. True means that it is directly stated in the passage, and not only is it directly stated, but it can be a small assumption. Like for example, popular black tea, and is notable or famous. Using synonyms like that is fair enough. That's not a big assumption to make. False means it's a direct contradiction, saying something like Assam tea is a popular black tea, and then in the question it says no one knows about Assam tea. That's going extreme contradiction. Can't tell means there is little information about it, not enough information basically to make that judgment call, or there's no information at all. Okay, that's where people sometimes can go wrong because they start to use external knowledge. But if there is not enough information or no information provided in the passage, never never make that big assumption. No, don't take that risk. Go with content. And then Bangladesh's climate would be suitable for the cultivation of Assam tea. So it says here, when it mentions about Bangladesh, that it's closely neighbored by Myanmar and Bangladesh that share a similar climate. So good. Climate is the main factor that that gives us an idea of where this tree would grow best. So there you go. If they're saying that Bangladesh, Myanmar is close neighbors and they have a similar climate, climate is the big deciding factor. That's not a big assumption for me to make. That's actually a safe assumption for me to make, to say that it's true. So yeah, it's good that you guys strongly agree. Some greenhouses are characterized by hot, wet weather. So the information given here about greenhouses is hot precipitation and warm daytime temperatures, an environment akin to a greenhouse. So yeah, it is giving some information there. Again, I can see why the room might be split on that. Oh, sorry. I can see why the room might be a bit split on that, but that's absolutely fair. But some greenhouses are characterized by hot, wet weather. So that statement there isn't something extreme. If I said something like all greenhouses are characterized by hot, wet weather, I'd immediately put my guard up, saying, "Oh, that's a bit extreme of a statement to make. Are you saying everything is that way? That's a bit too much of an assumption." In that case, I would be a bit shy about choosing to agree with it. But in this case, because it's a bit of a milder statement, it's more likely to be true. Not something that always implies, but something that might help you save some time in the exam, especially when you're running out of time. And in this case, I would probably agree with it more than I disagree, as you guys rightly chose. Finally, ceasiness grows best during the monsoon season in northeastern India. So the mention of that was here. It's a popular black tea derived from the leaves of ceasiness. The tea grows best in a warm and humid climate at sea level. So yeah, it's northeastern India. Is a it's just Assam. We don't know how big the entire northeast area is. It's just, again, some people here might have used external knowledge saying, it's just a smaller space. I know in general about northeast India. That was a bit of an external knowledge. That's a bit of a risk that you're taking there. But it doesn't say all of northeastern India. It just says Assam, where this does grow a lot, very well, is in that part of northeastern India. That's it. We don't know about the rest of northeastern India, so it might not be a good safe assumption to make that all of northeastern India during the monsoon season would be good weather for this type of tea. So leaning a bit on the strongly disagree end, but I can understand why people might have gone for the strongly agree. So yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you guys for answering. Let's move on to quantitative reasoning. I hope that will give you a good run through of decision making. There's obviously a lot more question types. There's about 20 different question types that we teach here at Medic Mind with individual tutors. And it's quite important to identify what the different question types are and not just blindly do the questions. There's another tip I would definitely say, because once you identify which question types you're particularly struggling at, and that's what you want to focus on. So basically, instead of just applying a random method of doing, let me do as many questions as I can. Someone told me practice is key, so I'll just practice everything. Yeah, that's fair enough. That's like one step closer to the right way to do it. But another step that was even that better would be to identify which question types you particularly struggle with and you want to improve on, and you're not scoring quite well, and practicing that. So it's quite important that you focus on the question type that you struggle with. And some of the question types I mentioned before is a glimpse into the different question types you'll come across in the UCAT exam. So now moving on to the next section that you'll have is quantitative reasoning. Quantitative reasoning, I would say, is a section that will give you less headache in terms of it's not as subjective. It's literally you're working with numbers. It's big calculations that part of it might give you some headache or might give you some might add to the time pressure. But if you get the answer right, you get the answer right. If you don't, you don't. It's sort of that deal, which will be good in the long run when you've done enough practice, when you become faster with doing your calculations. Mental maths helps here, and you don't need to be particularly good at maths to be a good achiever in quantitative reasoning. So let's take the example of two people. One is Jack, one is Sam. Jack in school was really good at A-level maths, but actually probably will end up getting just an example of this sort of person, but wasn't quite good at mental maths or doing quick maths or doing calculations. So you probably score lesser in the UCAT exam. Whereas Sam, on the other hand, was not as good at GCSE maths, um, but actually is quite good at doing quick mental maths. You can do addition, subtraction in what normally people would take 10 seconds. You can do that in 5 seconds. So you probably end up doing questions in the quantitative reasoning section a lot better, score a higher score. So that's literally what it comes down to. Can you do these questions, which would normally take a person without any practice 30 seconds? Can you do that in 10 seconds, 15 seconds, something like that? So that's really boiling it down to the essence of what quantitative reasoning is. So quantitative reasoning is one of the most divisive UCAT sections because of those different factors I talked about. Even if you love maths, familiarizing yourself with the questions is still a must. It's not complicated maths, it's a GCSE maths. So you have questions like mean, median, mode, probability, percentages, interest rates, tax rates. Those two might be something that might be foreign concepts to some people, but again, it's something you can easily familiarize yourself. It's not going to be complex geometry. It's not going to be complex algebraic equations. It's going to be simple equations at best, and nothing more than that. And again, easily solvable if you have good technique. So as I mentioned, ratios, percentages, graphs, interpreting tables. Sometimes involves simple calculations and complex calculations. Complex in the sense of it'll have lots of steps to it. So and even sometimes complex calculations, those steps you can have certain techniques on where I can estimate the answer and where I can work precisely, because some of these you might find easy but others more challenging depending on what you're comfortable with. It depends on the individual, really. So it tests your ability to interpret numerical data, solve mathematical problems, and make logical deductions from numerical information. So you might ask, all of these sections, they're for the medical or the dentistry entrance examinations, how are they actually testing that? It's like, how is maths going to be a part of me being a doctor or a dentist, etc.? It really boils down to the day-to-day tasks that you'll be carrying out as a junior doctor and further on. So, for example, drug calculations, drug doses, interpreting information in a research paper, or interpreting blood results, interpreting information about a person's body functions, kidney function, etc. You have lots of numbers to work with, lots of simple calculations to make, lots of precise calculations that you need to make, especially when you're giving medications to your patient. So it's a really sensitive information that you have to be good at. It's not, you're not expected to be a maths whiz, but just the basic level that you need to qualify to be a good, safe doctor. The examiners are also looking for you to be able to cope under stressful, time-limited situations. Again, try to simulate that sensation of being that environment of being a doctor. Can you do calculations? Can you do this drug doses, etc. in that time pressure environment that you have? So you have 36 questions to roughly do in 25 minutes. So the table shows the prices of different types of snack bars in a local supermarket. So this is roughly what So this is what it'll roughly look like. If you guys want to take a picture of this, we'll just move on to the questions, so you guys can have a go at it. Just to give you some ideas, just give you some more points about what the UCAT countries using section will be like. You won't be allowed a calculator if you've not been already mentioned that in the actual exam. What you will be given is a UCAT online calculator. It's sometimes a bit clunky, so it's good for you to familiarize yourself with that calculator. And also, the first picture I showed you at the beginning of my presentation was the classroom, sort of the room that you'll be in giving the exam. You'll be given a keyboard connected to a desktop. In that keyboard, the reason why I'm mentioning all of this is that mainly that keyboard has a keypad in it. And I would say that keypad proves really crucial to saving those very precious minutes and seconds when you're doing calculations, because you don't want to be pressing the number pad at the very top. It'll just take you some more time. If you use the keypad, it's structured in a way where you can type in the numbers and do calculations, addition, subtraction, functions much more easier using the online calculator that the UCAT exam offers you. So that's another thing. And just familiarize yourself with using that keypad as well. And you've really also given a whiteboard. I'm sure you guys know that already. Try to do simple calculations in that whiteboard as well. And if it's a mental maths situation or simple calculation, try your best to do it in your head, so that you don't have to write down many steps and just take some more time. It's a good balance of doing questions on the whiteboard, doing questions using the calculator, doing questions mentally. So yeah, that will come to master as you do more questions. So good. Let's do some of these questions together. So I hope you guys have taken a picture or have this in hand. Let's go to the first question. Good. We have 9 people already. So let's move on. Let's do the first question. Oh, sorry. So have a go. Type in your answer. Good. 2 people have answered. 3. Okay. So what have you got it right? Well done. So the answer was chalk bar. Good. Just keep that table in front of you. If you don't already have that, just go through this lines and you'll be able to see it. Let's move on to the next question. So far we have K at the very top. So well done, K. Any questions so far? just, there's a Q&A that you can open. I'll wait for a couple seconds there, a couple minutes there. If you have any questions so far about verbal reasoning, decision making, or quant reasoning so far. We have a couple more questions to go through, but before that, just halfway through, let's do some questions. So just type in, see if you have any questions for me. Ask me about anything: preparation, materials to use, different question types, how to handle it, how much practice to do um, leading up to the exam. Is it useful to do lots of question banks? Is it just useful to go through the techniques? When should I choose my exam? Anything literally about the UCAT, I'll try my best to answer. I'll just wait for about 2 to 3 minutes to give you some time to type your answer. Don't be shy, just type in anything. No question is a silly question. No question is a big question. Anything. Good, thank you. On decision making, is there an option to rank from disagree to strongly agree, or is it just true or false? So on decision making, that's a good question. Thank you very much. There is an option. There's an option like disagree to strongly agree, like what we did earlier in terms of like how much do you agree with it, disagree with it. It's not true or false. What you have in decision making is yes or no. So these are the statements, and then they'll give you another statement based off the information given, and you have to choose yes or no. Or sometimes you have to choose between agree and disagree. It won't be how much you agree with it or how strongly do you disagree with it, etc., like that. And yeah, but there are different question types with different ways to answer it, like yes or no, and true or false. Yeah, but not like the verbal reason where you're true, false, can't tell. Good. There's another question. If I haven't answered that question, whoever gave that properly, if there's something else you want to clarify, just type it in. I'll look at it. Are there time limits for each section? Yes, there is, and it's linear. It's not. It's one-way exam. You can't go back to your section. So when we saw the first slide, let me just quickly go back to the slide. So the breakdown. So once you do the 21 minutes, that's it. You move on to decision making. You can't go back to verbal reasoning. Similarly, once you go to quant reasoning, you can't go back to decision making. Once you go to abstract reasoning, you can't go back. So use that time wisely. You can sometimes, even if you're not sure about your answer, the best thing for you to do is just make an educated guess, flag. There's a flag function, and just choose that and move on to the next question. And at the end, if you have some spare time, go back to those flag questions and you can review it again to see if you can get it right. But my best advice to you would be to not leave any questions blank. So these are the fixed times for all of these questions, and once you do it, just keeps moving on. It's a rolling. I hope the questions are still there. Yep, they're still there. Good. Keep the questions coming, guys. These are really good questions. Thank you very much. What was your UCAT score, and did you do anything specific practice to prepare using certain online resources, for example? So yes, I did use quite a lot of online resources. I think my score was something 2830, 2850, something of that sort. The section I scored highest was contrary reasoning because I just like numbers, and it's something that you can if you just keep doing as many questions as you can, you're bound to get good at it. It's just a sort of muscle memory sort of activity as opposed to any sort of logical thinking to it sometimes. Certain online resources. I would say the UCAT is a very difficult exam, so try to grab at any resource and any help you can. People who have done the UCAT exam before, UCAT tutors, free online resources by MedicMind, free online users from other platforms. I would say I think what a lot of people used and I did use myself was Medify. It's a really good question bank that has a lot of questions about the UCAT and the different sections. MedicMind offers a question bank as well, similar to the other ones out there, but they have good You can do these sort of questions with your tutors, one-to-one tutors, to see where you're particularly struggling with, and basically catch you where you're struggling with a certain question, go back to it, and then do the question types again, being retaught that question type. So that's quite good. It's good to have tutoring in group, in a wider group, or even just one-to-one tutoring, depends upon you, or just any sort of help from someone who's actually done the UCAT exam. Yeah. And if you guys want to ask, so this is a question about you guys. Yeah, this is a good question about UCAT scores. Again, what we're doing the UCAT for is to get into a or good university, or a university of choice for medicine or dentistry. So it's good to have an idea about what UCAT score you want for specific to that university. So if you guys have any questions about that as well, about university choices and specific UCAT stuff, and what universities look for, what universities like, ask those questions as well. Ask anything really that you have in your mind. So yeah, those are the UCAT resources I used. I think I used some books as well, physical books. They're not particularly too useful, just because you want to try to simulate that environment in the UCAT as much as possible, which is online on a computer on a desktop. But I did use it whenever I was like outside, or I didn't have access to something like a computer or a laptop or a MacBook to practice on. So that did prove useful. So yeah, those were the different resources I used. Any tips for syllogisms? I always get 3 out of 5 and do not understand how to tackle them. Okay, so some of the decision-making questions. This is a good question. Again, thank you very much. Is you have 5 options. So in decision-making, something that's a bit annoying at times is you have 5 questions. If you get 4 out of 5, you get half a point. If you get 3 out of 5, sometimes you don't get any points for that. So yeah, it gets a bit hard in that sense. What you can do in these sort of situations is basically try to see where exactly you're going wrong. Is it with the time? You're not able to answer the questions in time, or is it something to do with possibly your understanding of the question? If it's something to do with the time, start by doing, and it applies to any question in the UCAT, to be fair, start by doing them on time. Try to understand, try to get a grip on it in terms of, how do I handle this question? Do I actually understand what they mean by this question? Is there particular words in there that's tripping my understanding of this question? So try to focus on it, take as much time as you can, and slowly you'll start seeing your time improve. Okay, if you perfect your technique, your time just naturally follows. So start by just doing those questions in on-time situations. If it's something to do with you're not understanding the wording of the questions, or you're not understanding the concepts of it, I would say getting help from tutors who have understanding of it would be useful, or someone who's done the examination before. Try to see tutorials online. MedicMind has YouTube channels on different question types and how to handle them, group classes, and you can also have a look at some what's it called? So when you go on websites like Medify and you do questions, syllogisms, they have answer explanations and video explanations similar to what MedicMind has. So that would be quite good as well to go through what they. So yeah, that would be good to go through as well. So yeah, there's a lot of help out there. Try to reach out, see what helps, see what fixes the issue, and yeah. Did you use Medify? Yeah, I did. I think everyone has used Medify at some point or the other. Medify is just that one big question bank to use before your exam. You have like 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, I think, sort of packages to do. And it has a lot of questions and video explanations. But yeah, but the only drawback, there's a couple of drawbacks obviously with Medify, is that it's just a question bank. It's like, I'm just going to dump a couple of questions on you. If you get it right, brilliant. If you don't, here's some explanation. I don't understand the explanation. Too bad. There's nothing more than that. So it's quite nice to have to not just have a simple explanation for it, but also someone explaining it to you. So that's not there. But sometimes that can lead you to go on YouTube and see tutorials of people doing questions with you. It's people doing some questions on past UCAT questions that have come up, and then seeing their thought process. But yeah, if you have any seniors, if you have anyone in the year above that's done the UCAT, ask them for help as well. That really helped me a lot, talking to people who have already done the UCAT. And also, it's something that the exam itself is something you've probably never come across in sort of that environment of roughly 150 minutes, time pressure environment, do the section, and then that's it. You can't touch that section again. You get your results. And I don't know if this is a spoiler alert for people, but if you do know, brilliant. If you don't, sorry, you get your results as soon as you finish the exam. So that's a bit daunting for some people. You don't usually get that with most examinations that you do, because it's a computer generated exam. So that's a bit daunting for some people. And yeah, so take all the help you can. That's if you take one thing away from this session, is get all the help you can. Tutor help is probably the best. Is in terms of not someone you hire, but any person who's done the UCAT before. Getting help from them is probably the best with someone who's had experience with it. A bit off topic, but were you confused to whether to study dentistry or medicine as were you just, or were you set on just one? So I personally was set on medicine from the get-go. I wasn't too confused. Are you particularly confused about it? Let me know your thoughts if you can write it down. I can talk to you specifically about why you might be confused and how you could tackle that. I have come across, so if this is useful tool, I have come across people that have been confused about choosing those two specialties because they're quite similar in the sense of what people want to get out of it: patient contact, improving patient quality of life. So good mix of biology and patient communication, patient interactions. So that it's quite similar in that end. Reasons why people choose one over the other, it's just personal preferences of what they like, that entices their interest. Medicine sometimes seems to be a bit more broader in the different specialties that it has, and uh, and also just other factors to it. Basically, dentistry is not something I've considered, but if it's something that interests you at all, after having done 4 years of med school, I've found out that certain specialty called oral maxillofacial surgery, um, something to do with fixing your anything in your face and your jaw and etc. All of that stuff. You have to do a dentistry degree. So even if I've done medicine for 5, 6, 7 years, if I want to be that sort of a surgeon, I have to do a dentistry degree for 4 years. So let's say down the line you actually think, oh, I want to do a bit of dentistry, even though I've done medicine, you can do dentistry. Or if you started out dentistry and you want to do medicine, you can do that, and then still continue to have a good balance of both specialties. Something interesting that I found, and something to think about. Is the UCAT similar to CAT's test in year 7? Unfortunately, I can't quite answer that question because I didn't do A levels. I did a different system. But yeah, I can't quite answer that. Sorry about that. But try asking someone on the Medic Mind page. I know there's loads of GCSE and A level tutors on there. You can ask them the question. But yeah. But just from general, from what I've heard, it's not the UCAT is quite different from most tests that you come across in GCSE and in school and college, etc. But could be similar. Not quite sure. Sorry. Good. Let me see if there's any other questions. Should I give a couple, just one more minute for any more questions? Anything you guys want to ask, just fire away. There's some time at the end as well. I can give for some questions if anyone has questions further on. But if you wanted to ask any further follow-ups to the already questions you've typed in, that's fine. If you have confusions about dentistry or medicine or just something else, you can ask that as well. It's a pretty interactive session, so yeah, keep it coming. Okay, there's one more question. Did you structure a revision timetable for the UCAT? If so, how did you do that? Good question. Thank you very much. That's a very useful question to know for anyone doing the UCAT. It is good to have a structure to your timetable. A month or a month and a half before the exam is ideal time to start preparation for, because not only will it give you time to familiarize yourself with the exam, but also give you some time to work out your quirks, work out what sections and questions specifically you find difficult, and work on it. There is a thing of over preparation, which will tire you out. So don't get into that habit. So preparing for 4 months, 3 months is something that will help for some people, but might also cause you to burn out sometimes or just be over prepared, which is not particularly useful either. Structure a revision timetable. Start with the sections you find most difficult. Let's say you do a quick mock or a quick run through mini mocks of different sections, and you find actually, oh, abstract reasoning is the most difficult for me. I'm not good at finding these patterns, or I'm not good at verbal reasoning. I'm not good at reading these sections quickly. Start with that section first. Practice with your weaknesses. Go on to your strengths after that, and then continue on. So structure your revision timetable based of that. Have a consistency. Do every day an hour, 2 hours at best. um, an hour would be ideal. Day to some questions or going through some tutorials or having just a class with your tutor is enough. If you do that consistently, that will perfectly work out. How did I structure a revision timetable? I didn't have like a set in stone timetable. I just did, okay, so I'm just going to start by doing the section questions untimed. I'm going to take some lessons after I've been taught about these questions by my tutor. I'm going to do these questions. I've been given as homework, or I'm going to do these questions on Medify or the Medic Mind question bank. Um, I'll do those questions by myself untimed. Once I got a good and untimed, I moved on to timed questions. Once I got a good at timed questions, I started doing mini mocks in the UCAT format. Once I got good at that, I was happy with it. I did a full mock of that entire section. Once I was happy with that, I just moved on to the next section. And once I was happy with all the 5 sections, I was like, cool, I'm just going to give a full mock. That's the quick run through progression of how I did it. What date is ideal for the UCAT? So if you want to do a month from now, start of July, mid-July would be ideal. Yeah, quickly to answer that. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for your questions, guys. I'll take some questions at the end, but just to move on with the other sections. Abstract reasoning. So abstract reasoning has long been thought of as one of the hardest and most frustrating UCAT sections. It has a reputation with students for causing confusion and trick questions, eating up a lot of precious time. So abstract reasoning is sometimes a bit headachy of a section because it's pattern recognition, something you probably never come across in GCSEs, A level, school, college, or any curriculums. I did a completely different system and I didn't come across it. So it might be a bit hard to familiarize yourself with it. But once you do familiarize yourself with it and you have a good, well structured practice, good technique, having a good way of handling it, then once you have that good insight into the structure behind these questions, you'll be able to have a good hold on it, actually get a good score, and maybe become one of your stronger sections. So remember that no matter how random the shapes appear, there's always a pattern behind them. And the randomness that you might sometimes see with these questions is, besides the pattern, there's a distractor. So there's 2 bits to the abstract. Abstract reasoning has a pattern that you want, and then there's distractors. There's some shapes put in that are going to confuse you, and they are intentionally put there to confuse you so that you take some time from finding the pattern. And again, they're trying to simulate your environment as a junior doctor, as a doctor in the future once you qualify. I'll give you a general idea about it. So there's about 50 questions to answer in 12 minutes. Doesn't sound like a lot, but actually, what what it comes down to is your time management. Once you find the pattern, it will take only 5 seconds to actually choose the answers, because once you know the pattern, you're just going to match the boxes to the different sets. So yeah, so the reason why they test abstract is good to know, so that you have an idea of going into going into your practice sessions of why I need to do this, why I need to be good at it. One is when you have X-rays, you want to find patterns, see if something's wrong, see what's normal, so that you can identify and diagnose that patient. And if a patient comes in with a fracture and he has a fever at the same time, what are you going to deal with? Fracture or the fever? Probably the fracture, right? Because that's the more imminent. That's the pattern you want to find. That's the immediate issue to deal with, as opposed to the fever, which is sort of the distractor. Something to treat, something that can be treated, something on the back burner because there's something more pressing of an issue. Or trying to make sure you get all the blood tests, the X-rays, all the scans. A patient comes in with a fever and snotty bubbles, and it's hay fever season. So you're thinking, oh, this is probably hay fever, something like that. Just to put all of it together, see if pattern arises from that. So, so this is a question. So let's try to do this question together. Take a picture of it, or you can't memorize it. Take a picture of it, or if you have it on your tab or something, just hold it there, and then we'll do a question in the next slide. And yeah, give a thumbs up once you've taken a picture or had a look at it. Thank you. 2 people there. It's good to know that people are taking a good look at it. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. There are thumbs up now coming up quite quickly. Good. Just gonna give you 30 more seconds. If people are memorizing it, that's also brilliant. Not needed, but brilliant. Okay, good. Let's move on to the question. So, good. I'm waiting for 3 more people, or at least 1 more people. So yeah, good. There's that person. Let's move on. So answer fast to get more points. Let's go. Look at your phones. So the question from earlier, which set does it belong to? Good. Set A. So 3 of you voted for that. Well done. It's quite hard to find the pattern in that section, but basically you're trying to match, seeing if there is a certain pattern going on here with the shaded triangles, the unshaded triangles, where what the position of them are, and also these gray ones. I won't go into actually finding the pattern. It's quite hard. There isn't certain technique. There is certain things we're doing with colors and shapes and numbers. But as you do the questions, you'll get a better idea of what they're trying to do when you read the explanations there, what their thinking is. But yeah, thank you guys. Well done to the 3 of you. So situation judgment, next section is the final section of the UCAT. So now you've done all the 4 sections. Those are probably the more important ones. Now you're coming down to the situation judgment section. This is not scored the same way as the other sections. The other sections, as you might already know, is scored from 300 to 900. So you can score a maximum of 3,600 technically, but I don't think anyone else done that, or maybe 1 or 2 people. Good score in situation judgment. So for the scores on situation judgment, it's not scored that way. It's scored and based on bands. Band 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 being the best one, best band you can get. 4 being the worst one. 4 being the lowest score, as opposed to the worst one. Sorry. So band 1 or 2 is what you want to ideally try to achieve in your practice, so you have a good consistency going on there. So it looks at how you would react in certain clinical or professional settings. The situation judgment exam, you'll be given a situation, something like you're a medical student and you're on wards helping junior doctors with patients. So that's the scenario, and then the statement will be you decide to withdraw from all the cases that you've been helping on because you're stressed and you're having a bit of a breakdown. Immediately withdraw from all the cases. So then you'd have to choose from, is it appropriate but not ideal, inappropriate but not awful, and then inappropriate completely. There'll be 4 options like that. That's a type of question called appropriateness. There's a question called importance. Is it important but not? It's similarly 4 formats, 4 different things, and you have to choose from one of them. So this judges how you would act in a certain professional environment, how you would react, and what's the most important thing. What do you prioritize? Maybe that's not the best reaction to that situation. Maybe there's a better reaction. Maybe, yes, you need to take a step back when you're mentally stressed out. When you have to take a step back from work, but was that the best way to go about it? So those are the thoughts that need to go in your head. And there are basic principles that you can follow when you're doing these sections to have an idea of how best to react. This comes from the GMC's Guide to Good Medical Practice, the medical ethical pillars. There's lots of data information out there that you can read, and we have a good couple lessons on the different principles, professionalism, communication skills, knowledge, how to apply this knowledge, in appropriate situations, the duties of a doctor, the credibility, the capacity, lots of different wide ranging topics that you have to have a good knowledge of when you're doing these questions. And this knowledge also builds up when you're doing some for some people actively when they're doing questions, because they'll try to use their previous knowledge with doing the questions. If it's wrong, you can read the explanation, learn something new, move on. So some people learn that way as well, and some people learn passively. So it really depends on what works best for you, and it's important to identify that early on. Despite being the last section and arguably the least time pressure, do not think that it's any less important. It's a very good point, because you need to make sure that you do not neglect this, because if you so you need to ensure that you have a band 3 or above. This is a common cutoff for lots of UCAT universities, and even a band 1 or 2 to be completely safe. Depends on the what everyone gets in a year. So I remember one of the years I was teaching, I think last year or last year, all my everyone or most of my tutees were getting very high good scores, 2800, 2700. But and like some of my some students who got lesser scores, 2600, something like that, were getting all consistently band 3s, which was very weird, because they all scored a band 1 or 2 when they were practicing with me. But the thing was, it was a consistent thing that across the board everyone was scoring that. The good students scoring high, the students scoring low on the 4 sections. So sometimes it comes down to the averages as well. So don't bog yourself bog yourself down too much with this information. It really depends on the averages that come up in that year. But ideally, what you want to do is be safe, regardless of what the averages are of the performances of that year. Try to consistently get a band 1 or 2 in your practice, so that you can try to replicate that in the actual exam. And you have 69 questions, which has been increased to do in 29 minutes. Again, still time pressured. So, what is a good score for situation judgment? The higher the mark, the better. So, let's have a look at the interim scores for the UCAT last year as an example. Um, so, band 1 means 20%, band 2 means 36%, band 3 means 31%, band 4 means 14%. What do these percentages mean? This shows you the percentage of people and what band they got by 29th of September 2022. So roughly, most people sit in that band 2 area. That's a very comfortable spot that most people get. Band 1 is 20%. Again, band 1 or 2 is ideally where you want to be, and more than half of you will be there, statistically speaking. Band 3 is 31%. Again, it's not a bad place to be. It just depends. Again, remember what I said earlier. You want to be smart with choosing, preparing and getting a score appropriate to the university of your choice. So if there are very good universities that take a band 3, don't place much importance on SJT. There are very good universities that take a band 1 only or a band 2 only. So stuff like that, you have to just make sure that you have knowledge of. That comes with help from someone that knows about it, and this will again give you an idea of where you want to sit when you are applying for universities. So yeah, roughly band 1 or 2 or 3 is mostly safe for most UCAT universities. So what does this mean? What this means is that in 2021, 16% of candidates scored a band 1 situation judgment in the interim report, whereas for 2022, this was only 20%. This is 20%. This may mean that while a band 1 is still you set you apart from the competition, most students are receiving higher scores. So it's even more competitive, and everyone else is going higher and higher. To just don't make put unnecessary pressure on yourself. Just try your best to get as much as you can, and consistency is key. And I'm sure everyone can achieve a good score if they have consistent, good quality practice. And again, choose universities based off your UCAT score, or try to tailor your practice based off that. And also, there's some universities that place more weight on a higher SJT banding, so that's something to look out for. This is again a blog post that we've made on where you can apply with a certain UCAT score. Higher UCAT score, 2,800 and above, or 2,800, 2,600, 2,800, somewhere below. There's always some university for every band and every score of UCAT, and there are some universities that don't place much emphasis on UCAT and place more emphasis on person statement, your interview, etc. So try to have a good research of the different universities as well when you're applying to them. Good. So this is an example of a question. So have a read, and have a read and take a picture, choose your answer, and then we'll go on to the next page. Yeah. Just give me just press the heart button once you've taken a picture or decided on your answer. I'll just wait for 2 more people to do it, and then we'll move on. Okay, okay, good. So let's do. We've got 8 people. That's good enough. Let's do the question. I've enabled comments if you guys want to throw in a comment on why you chose a particular option. It's anonymous, so you can just voice your thoughts out. Okay. So split on, everyone chose on completely different options. So it is a very appropriate thing to say. So let's go through it, shall we? So yeah, if anyone wants to comment on this question, give your thought process as to why you went with a certain answer choice, please do, so I can help you identify where your thinking was and what the thinking that the UCAT people might want, or what is more ideal in the workplace. Having been a medical student for a while, just to give you that idea of what the thinking is behind this question. I would like to know what your thinking was. So, anyways, just to jump into this question, Jess is a medical student on placement in the local hospital. She has been asked by one of the senior doctors to assist in an invasive procedure. Since there are very few doctors on the ward available to Jess to help, Jess does not feel comfortable with assisting because she's never performed this procedure on a patient or practiced on a model. Because she knows the theory well, the doctor reassures Jess that she can help him as she will be supervised. How appropriate are each of the following responses by Jess? So that's another thing. You'll be given a passage and you might think, oh, this is a big passage for an awful just one question. Sometimes there'll be follow-up questions as well. So it's good to read the entire question sometimes. I do not have the skill to perform this procedure, so I do not think it is appropriate for me to carry it out. From the face value of it, and from what I might have said before, you might think, "Oh, she's just refusing to do something. That sounds a bit rude. It's causing some. It sounds like the example that Adi gave earlier about withdrawing from the cases immediately because of your mental health. It seems like the right thing to do because you're struggling, but not the appropriate way to go about it. So that's what you might be thinking. There might be a softer way, but actually, the response you can see here, it doesn't say anything, it's not extreme. What she does say is, I do not have the skill to perform this procedure, so I do not think it is appropriate for me to carry it out. That's a good reasoning, absolutely understandable reasoning, and the reasoning that you should be given. So, any skills that are beyond your competency, if you're a medical student, you're not allowed to, and you shouldn't be giving medical advice because you're not qualified healthcare professional. And more importantly, you're not their particular healthcare professional, that patients, or if it's your family asking for advice, etc. You're not, and as an F1 doctor, you have a certain capabilities, certain things that you're trained at, certain things that you are allowed to do, but other people can't do. Certain nurses can't do, certain physiotherapists can't do. And there are again some roles that nurses can do, but that doctors can't do. So there's a interplay of what different people's roles are and jobs are and what their responsibilities are. It's important to know that when dealing with these questions. If she doesn't have the skill to perform a procedure, but let's say she just go ahead with it because the doctor says, "Oh, I'll be supervising you," she could still possibly cause harm to the patient. What if she's not stopped? Um, if she doesn't have any knowledge of the procedure, it immediately puts the patient at even more risk than they should be, that the team should be taking on. Even if it's understaffed, the patient safety is the most important thing. And one thing you learn in medical school or dentistry is your patient is the most important. Is the most important thing to deal with. Patient care, patient safety, and yeah, that's the most important thing you should ensure at all times. Patients should be benefited more than they're harmed. The ethical pillars, more beneficence and non-maleficence. Um, so yeah, it's important to just make sure that the patient is safe. In this case, if she does a procedure that might harm the patient because she doesn't have knowledge about it, even if she's supervised, it might cause harm to the patient. So she has all the rights to withdraw. So that's why it's a very appropriate thing to say. Hope you guys understood that, the reasoning behind why it's a very appropriate thing to say. Some people went for appropriate but not ideal. I understand that, but the good thing about in these sort of questions is you still get half a point for that because it's partially correct. If you choose an appropriate but not awful and a very inappropriate thing to say, you'll get 0. But because you're halfway there, you get half a point for option B. Well done. And K, well done. Just give a round of applause for K. And then M, and then A. Good. So that was the questions from earlier. Let me see if there's any new questions. What date is ideal? So yeah, this is your time. We have about 15 minutes for any questions at all, really, about anything about situation judgment, because there's a new section I've introduced. Anything about UCAT preparation, UCAT tutors, Medic Mind, the courses that we offer, any help, how your school can help you with it, who you can approach at school. I've been through the same process that you're going to be going through. So ask me about my experience, how I event with the ups and downs of preparation, the stressfulness of it, and how to handle that stress, how to prioritize your application, how to do the right things at the right time so that you don't fall behind on any deadlines, anything really.
Addy,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
We got a question from Instagram, and it says, "How do you make a revision timetable for the UCAT exam?"
Oh, brilliant. I touched upon that later, but thank you for that question. So, how do I structure a revision timetable? So so do it by the sections. What you don't want to do is fall into the trap of doing one section a lot and falling behind on the others. So I would say have a good split of how much time you're spending on each of the sections in a week. So start with the sections at the beginning of the week that you struggle with the most. Deal with the question type specifically to that section. Spend more time on that. Once you see yourself improving, go on to questions you find less difficult, and then continue that process till you're completely comfortable with that entire section. But do continue to do all the sections as much as you can throughout the week. And or situation judgment is something that people end up doing passively, not something actively as a section completely dedicated to it, because it's sometimes a fun pastime, for lack of a better word, because it's not something you actively do question for and equations and all that stuff, and something that's quite fun as you do more and more questions. So I would say, as part of a revision timetable, do the different sections, and when you get bored or when you get tired, as much as it sounds a bit extreme or sounds a bit extra, do some situation judgment questions if you feel a bit tired, or just one or two questions is enough. One or two passages is enough to keep you on track with your situation judgment progress as well. So consistency is key. And with revision timetable, spend equal times on all the sections. Spend more time on the sections you find more difficult.
Can I just ask if you timetabled it according to the number of questions or just the number of hours you're going to spend on the UCAT per night?
So yeah, so Mike, was this another question as a follow up for that?
It's just a follow up, yeah.
Yeah. So what I did was to just spend more time. So I had school. Yeah. The reality is you have other stuff to do at the same time, like school, college, extracurricular activities, volunteering, extra whatever. So what you want to do is achieve consistency every day. So I didn't spend more time on a certain section in a day. It was an hour, 2 hours at best in a day. More time on the weekend. That I did. So let's say I personally struggled with abstract reasoning to begin with. So I started off practicing abstract reasoning in the beginning. So I spent 2 weeks, 3 weeks on just abstract reasoning more than the other sections. So let's say on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll do abstract reasoning. But I have another 4 days and I need to do that on the other section. So I spent the other 4 days doing the other sections and quickly revisiting a couple questions in abstract reasoning. So I'm not going through theory, I'm not learning or memorizing stuff, I'm just doing questions. Doing questions and getting them wrong is fine, but it's good to always keep touch. Don't lose touch with doing sections. That's all. So yeah,
Thank you.
brilliant. I think there's an. Is it recommended to revise more than 2 hours a day for the UCAT? Realistically speaking, if you're able to achieve that, good, but you don't want to burn yourself out. Burnout is a big issue in terms of any exams, especially the UCAT being a stressful, time pressured exam. To achieve consistency, you need to find a time that you find most comfortable for yourself. Even though it's a competitive exam, you don't want to lose. You don't want to sacrifice your mental health or struggle with your physical health. So yeah, choose a time that works best for you. If half an hour is the time that you can focus on because you have attention span of 30 minutes, that's absolutely fine. What you can do is small sessions throughout the day, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, that's fine. An hour. Or you don't have to be sitting in one place for an hour, or you can just change your places sometimes, do a couple hours. But to answer more specifically to your question, more than 2 hours is fine. If you find that helps you, you need that much time to get hold of a section and to achieve that consistency. But it's just a rough guideline of to do an hour a day for most people. Do you recommend doing a UCAT one-to-one tutoring course? So without being biased of being a UCAT tutor myself who does online one-to-one tutoring, I'll give you the benefits and I'll give you the benefits and the drawbacks if there are. The benefits are obviously with anything that you have, there needs to be specialized. And no one fits in a mold, right? If you find a certain question difficult, it's hard to do some. If it's hard to navigate any questions, any exams by yourself, you need some teaching. That's why you go to school for. So to help you familiarize yourself with the knowledge that you need to know and understand the concepts and answer questions based on then pass the examinations. Same things comes with one-to-one tutoring. It could be one-to-one tutoring, it could be group tutoring. Well, the one-to-one tutoring, why it's much more effective, is basically comes down to the fact that let's you're going to be doing those questions with a tutor, and the tutor is there to supervise you and advise you on and pick up on, oh, this is I think this is where you're not yourself identifying that you're going wrong. This is your thought process, and this should be your thought process based on what I'm thinking as a tutor, and I can help you with that particular question type. Or I'm going to identify that, and we're going to teach you that topic again, and we're going to keep working on that. So that guidance to help you throughout the entire UCAT preparation would be perfect. And yeah, that's why it helps to have a person guiding you throughout, because that gives you bit of relief as well, because you have someone you can rely on who's got a good score, who's been through it already, who knows how to teach. So at the end of the day, it's how much do you want to manage your stress levels, and how much do you want to yeah, but it still comes down to your own effort and 50% practice, 50% learning from a tutor about the technique.
If you don't mind, I just wanted to add that there's loads of people who sit the UCAT that don't have tutors and do it themselves, like myself, but like all my friends that I know. So it is possible to get a good score and also do it yourself. So you don't always have to, if one-to-one tutoring isn't in your budget, or you can't spend that, then it's fine. You can still pass the UCAT and get a good score and get into a good university.
Yeah, absolutely. And to just second that point, I should have definitely mentioned that. And thank you so much. You don't have to have a big question bank that you want to buy. You don't have to have a tutor that you want to work with and pay lots of money for. You should be able to achieve the exam in your own comfortable space based on the abilities and what financial restrictions you might have, and you are able to achieve that. Many people have done that. There was a time before Medify that UCAT was there, and people were able to achieve good scores. But again, it really comes down to being, if you're consistent with good technique, and the resources there are plenty of free resources out there to prepare from, and if you just practice by yourself, even having that consistency, you should be able to get a very decent, if not a brilliant score. Good. Any specific resources, websites, or books that you recommend? So yeah, there's Pearson question books on UCAT, Kaplan question books on UCAT. Those are physical books. Not too many people use it, but it's still out there if you want to. They'll just have good explanations. Medify is the big one. They have a question banks, and also if you find it expensive, then ask your school if they have sort of a discount thing with Medify. Sometimes they do discount things with schools. Ask your school counselors. That's something I've come across with one of my tutees. They were able to get a free access to it. Medic Mine has a question bank as well. You can check out. It's quite big. And in terms of otherwise, there's Medic Portal. Medic Portal has lots of good resources, and student forum. I think, I'm not quite sure what the platform is, but there's lots of good UCAT tips and people on there who are applying for that year, and people in the previous years that have applied for the UCAT and gone to universities. Not applied for the UCAT, but done the UCAT and applied for universities that have good tips out there. There's plenty of resources online, so just go through it. Medic Mine as well has so many free blogs and advice pages and PDFs and books on different techniques and tactics that you can go through, and Medicportal similarly, and many of the websites, Medify as well, obviously.
Can I just touch on that?
Yes.
There's also that Get into Medical School 1250 UCAT question book that you can buy, and you can buy it secondhand, and it can be quite cheap, so it's around £6 or £7. So if money is an issue, then you can just buy it secondhand.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you or most universities, so when you're researching your universities, you'll find that certain universities have these societies called WAMs, which is widening access to medical school, and those societies run UCAT sections, UCAT seminars, and UCAT teaching sessions. Sometimes free one-to-one tutoring, but you need to get that information from the specific universities. WAMs, if you just go on Instagram or check out the university pages for widening access to medical school and what WAMs, and you'll be able to get lots of resources, just not for UCAT, but also for medical school interviews and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What UCAT bank course do you recommend? Medify is good. MedicMind is good without being too biased. There's lots of good resources. See what works best for you as an individual. Online question banks are better than physical ones. If I feel prepared for my UCAT, would you recommend that I move it forward? If you feel prepared, go for it. Don't put it forward. Don't prepone or nothing. Just whatever date you got, just go with it. Just think about the practicalities of it more than anything. If you want to try to get your score, so you have an idea about which universities would accept your score, if that's something to think about. Certain universities accept a higher score, certain universities have a threshold of certain UCAT scores that it will take. But most universities, what they end up doing is waiting for the averages to come out from that year of what everyone scored. So if the average is 2,600 and you scored 2,700, brilliant. You have a good opportunity to get into most universities. If the average was actually 2,800 and you was 2,700, then some universities change their thresholds and what they want in the UCAT scores and etc. You can get this information from going on online forums and visiting the university websites and what scores they've accepted. So that's good to know in terms of practical reasons of doing a UCAT on the date that you've already done. But if you feel prepared and you're confident with your UCAT preparation and you've been consistently getting good scores that you're happy about, then go for it. You don't need to move it forward. Did you have anything else? Did you have anything to add to that?
No, you answered it well.
How much do you charge an hour for UCAT tutoring? I do it with MedicMind, so you need to contact the MedicMind team about that. So yeah, that would be best to talk to them about it. You can just go on the StudyMind MedicMind website, and they will be able to take you through the process. You can book a trial class and stuff, which is free, I think, and then you can see if you want to go ahead with it. But yeah.
We have a question on Instagram. It says, what do we do if we don't understand what the ethics guide says? So I think this is relating to GMC, the GMC
Okay, so the GMC Guide to Good Medical Practice, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you don't understand it, that's a very good question. I've been in med school for 4 years and I haven't read it fully. I've done the UCAT and many ethical questions or exams or whatever. It is quite hard to understand some of them because it's like reading legal paper, like legal documents sometimes. Try your best to understand it. Don't get bogged down too much by it. In reality, you don't need to have A to Z understanding of everything in the Guide to Medical Practice. You don't have to have if you have a 40% understanding of it, it's brilliant. You learn, practically speaking, from doing questions in situation judgment more than anything. So to do the questions, if you get it wrong, read the explanation. If you can't remember the explanation, or if it just doesn't stick in your head, write it down as like this is like my commandment. I'm going to write this down. If patient safety is key, that's my commandment. I'm going to remember it and then move on. So you can make notes on what you learn from doing questions, and I think that helps most people. So don't worry too much about reading the documents and memorizing it or understanding it. You're not trying to pass an exam on the guide to medical good guide to medical practice. So yeah, tell me about it.
Perfect.
Was there anything else?
I haven't got anything else on Instagram.
Perfect. Okay. Any more questions from you guys? I'll go back to this page if you have any more questions for me. I'll wait a minute. I know we're reaching the end of the session. If you have any more questions, type it in. last 15 seconds. Okay, so this is a WhatsApp group chat for Medic Mind. We have a group chat for the medics and entry group 2024. It's good to have an idea of what everyone else is going through at the same stage as you. Your peers from the same year who's going to be joining you, hopefully in medic school or dentistry in the next year. Give you shared tips on what their preparation techniques are, have study buddies, see what resources they've found, see what's worked for them, see what worked for you from other people's techniques, and how has plenty of free resources and tips as well that Medic Mind people will be sharing with you, Medic Mind tutors. So yeah, it's been a pleasure teaching you guys today, answering all your questions. If you have any more questions, do reach out to us through the Medic Mind email. These are some free Medic Mind UCAT resources, some practice questions to do. If you guys want to take a picture of this, go for it. UCAT blog about the different topics, and YouTube channel as well, where we go through the different UCAT question types with the person explaining it, and how to tips and techniques. There's plenty of resources out there that's free from Medic Mind, so you can go through. That might help you. Brilliant.
Okay.
Yeah, follow us on TikTok and Instagram.
Thank you so much, Adi. It was really useful, your tips and advice, and thank you for your time.
No worries. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.